Hello there, it's Austin, and today we're going to be talking about a Belgian Witbier that I do not have any to show you right now. But it is for a good reason, so let's talk about how we made it and where it went. So I wanted to try brewing a more traditional 5-gallon batch on my 2.5-gallon system, so that starts by gathering just over 7 gallons of water. We're not going to add it all to the kettle to start. We're actually going to start by adding just over 4.7 gallons of water to our Anvil Foundry 6.5 gallon. For the water additions, I'll be doubling up the calcium chloride compared to the Epsom salt and gypsum additions for this batch. And then we can jump right over to the fermentables. I'm using a majority or 40% Pilsner malt, along with a 20% charge of white wheat malt, which will give us a bready flavor and maybe a little bit of fermentable sugars compared to the flaked additions. Speaking of those flaked additions, once we've added our milled grains to the mash, it's time for our flaked wheat and flaked barley. This will contribute body and mouthfeel, along with making our mash look a whole lot like oatmeal. 10 pounds of grains is pretty much right at the limit as to what the 6.5 gallon version of the Anvil Foundry can handle. I think I might have even had to pull a little bit of water out to fit that amount of grains in, so be careful if you're pushing your batch size up and trying to make a heavier beer past 5% or so. At the conclusion of our mash, it's time to add the rest of our water back in. I preheated my water on the stove just to help out with the heating time a little bit, and then it's time for our boil, which is a little bit stressful, pushing 6 gallons in our 6.5 gallon capacity kettle, but what's a brew day without risk of a massive spill? After adding our first wort hops of Magnum, we'll go ahead and prep our orange zest. I zested about 2 large oranges, which yielded me around an ounce of zest. This will go in at the 5-minute mark, along with our final hop additions of East Kent Goldings hops. In the spirit of Witbier, I was going to add some coriander as well, but I forgot to do that, so just orange for this batch. At the conclusion of our 60-minute boil, it's time to cool down our wort to a yeast pitch temperature of 70 degrees or so. With our wort cooled and after a quick snack break, it's time to transfer into our fermenter. I'm using a 7-gallon conical SS brew bucket from the days where I made 5-gallon batches more frequently, and the yeast I'll be using is Y-Yeast's 3944 Belgian Witbier strain. With everything loaded and ready to go, I'll take a quick gravity reading, which was a little lower than I expected, but not too bad considering I wasn't able to boil very vigorously or, add more grain. For the fermentation schedule, I pretty much just left it for 14 days at room temperature in my conical fermenter. At that point, our final gravity was looking right and everything tasted pretty good, so I cold crashed it with my glycol chiller and transferred it over to our 5-gallon ball lock keg. This beer was carbonated at serving pressure and then loaded up with a couple other brews and taken to a summer festival, where, as you might imagine, it was pretty hot. So this 4% light-bodied Belgian Witbier with a splash of orange was a big hit, alongside some brats and potato salad, of course. So I took this beer in a 5-gallon keg alongside 3 other beers in 2.5-gallon kegs to this summer festival, and this Belgian beer kicked before any of the other kegs. The orange and the wheat supplied a little bit of sweetness, but it was super lightweight and still enjoyable, whether you're sitting in the sun or dancing to the music or you had eaten 3 bratwursts like I did. It was a little bit of a struggle making this beer, which was a 5-gallon batch, on my system that is more well suited for 2.5-gallon batches. The amount of grains I had to add to the grain basket almost made it spill. The amount of water I had to add during the boil almost made it spill. Overall, there was just almost a lot of spills. But in a pinch, it worked out pretty well, and I'm super pleased with the recipe, so maybe I'll make a 2.5-gallon batch of it later that I can drink by myself, and then actually have some to show you. Overall, it was a super refreshing, lightweight beer that was pretty approachable for people at the festival, so I'd give it a, wow, you really made this, out of 10. Cheers!